in our fight against fraud, or MOMO fraud. So we've put in place a team of somewhere between 30 to 40 people looking across all the different elements of MOMO transactions and how we can block all the different areas that these fraudsters are taking advantage of, including customer education, which is the third pillar on the right side, looking at how to build alliances within the communities to educate people, make them more aware. But that's not enough, right? The awareness is one thing. How do we also ensure that our processes are continue to evolve every day as new technology comes up and new tricks come up? Across all telecoms networks in Ghana. Not the SIM, but the actual phone. So you have to keep buying phones. Before, they had to buy SIMs, but now you have to keep buying phones. And it's costly, okay? But we're also working with the police to arrest some of these fraudsters so that we can also go through a prosecution process. And this is working really well. The final stage of the prosecution is a bit slow because of our court system hasn't yet caught up with digital and the time that's needed. So, these are all the different things we're supporting to work on. Once we get those things in place, then you can get a case come through on MOMO fraud, and within a number of days, prosecution happens, and then we can move on. But there's a lot of work going on, and everybody is involved. This is not an issue for MTN alone. And I want to emphasize that a lot of times when we think of MOMO fraud, we think of MTN. But it's a problem for Ghana, because the same fraud is happening at banks, the same fraud is happening in shops, the same fraud is happening on e-commerce sites, and we need to come together to fight fraud so that there are better systems in place from the police support system. There are better systems in place from the court processing system so that all of these things can be handled holistically. Otherwise, we'll leave it to one company, we'll do our best, but we forget that if they can't get MOMO fraud, if we solve the MOMO fraud problem and they can't get MOMO fraud, then they come to your house with guns breaking in. Because they want to find some way of getting money anyway. And therefore, we need to address this holistically. So I'm appealing to all of us to come together and make this a national problem so that we can solve this problem properly once and for all. But nonetheless, we'll continue to put in the effort we have already put in to continue to fight this fraud. And thanks for all your support so far. We've talked a lot about our responsibility towards the communities within which we work in. So doing good to do business. And a lot of the times, if you think of business that way, the things you focus on are influenced by that. So COVID was a very difficult period for all of us. And we took a number of different decisions around how to support and how to change our tactical execution during that period so that we can continue to move forward as a business. And of course, the first pillar of that, our people, to make sure our staff are covered, they are safe, so that they can continue to serve our customers. Now, once we did that, we said, how do we support our customers as well? What do they need? How do we make sure our environments are safe so when they come to the MTN stores, come to the MTN premises, they're not at risk? So we put in place all the necessary protocols to manage that. But we also said there are ways we can support our communities through education and the Ghanaians in general. Through education, making sure people are aware of what's happening and how to manage in those situations, distributing masks, distributing PPEs to hospitals, to communities, to support. And supporting government with 5 million Ghana cedis as well as other different types of support, things like computers and Noguchi, things like that to accelerate testing, PCR machines to increase the volume of tests we can run so people can isolate, supporting contact tracing so we can isolate people, trace people. All these things we felt we had a responsibility to support in. But at the same time, life must go on, right? COVID happened, but if we stop everything, then our economy will crumble. So in supporting things like education, we said, let's allow people to be able to learn and study from home, making 200 plus websites zero rated, essentially free. If you access through an MTN SIM, you get zero charges. And those offers still prevail today because we believe that the effects of the pandemic continue to live on. But supporting productivity is important. Education, again, scholarships to students, increasing the benefits so that they can continue to study while going through COVID, a very difficult time for everyone. And these are some of the things we've done and we're focused on through the COVID period. Now, some of our staff also had very unique situations where, because of the informal economy in Ghana, families were broken up in terms of generating income. So one part of the family may continue to generate income, but they relied on income from two different members of the family. So we built this fund so that staff could contribute to the fund, and other members of staff who had certain challenges could come to the fund to request for support. We raised about 350,000 Ghana cedis in that fund, and we disbursed, thank you very much. And we disbursed about 330,000 of the 350 so far, affecting close to 900 staff members. Some of them are not necessarily directly employed by MTN. So anyone who's working as a third-party staff, from contract companies or third-party companies, our own staff, our direct contractors, everyone was involved in generating this fund, and the benefits went to those extended workforce guys as well. But in all of this, education is critical, right? Your best defense towards COVID is being educated and practicing the protocol. So we launched a campaign, Be Wise. That campaign transitioned into a version 2 of Be Wise. And more recently, we've come up with one more push in coincidence with the third wave of COVID, which was announced a few weeks ago. We've seen increasing trends on COVID, and we believe that we can support again by raising awareness that there are some very basic practices that should not be forgotten. In support of all of this, we continue to look at our communities. I already mentioned education, health, and economic empowerment being the 3 pillars of the MTN Ghana Foundation. So far, we've delivered over 150 projects and counting. We'll continue to support in all these ways. And this year, as part of our 25th anniversary, at some point, we're going to launch a specific project that commemorates our 25 years in Ghana as well, as far as the foundation is concerned. So very exciting for us, but more than exciting is really what this means for the communities where we support and build some of these solutions. So this slide just talks about, outside of all of this, we're a company that's responsible, and we make sure that we pay our taxes when they're due. Last year, MTN contributed about 6% of the total taxes from corporates in Ghana, 2.6 billion Ghana cedis. We contributed towards taxes, supporting government's drive for growing revenues. Thank you. But as part of that, we're also part of the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy, and we paid over 100 million Ghana cedis towards this fund. You saw this fund being used, again, as part of the COVID management instruments from government. Our contribution constituted over 20% of the National Fiscal Stabilization Levy, and we continue to contribute to this fund. And in fact, we're the only telecoms company that contributes to this fund. Thank you. As part of being a telecommunications company, contributed over 380 million Ghana cedis in 2020, which represents approximately 70% of the total communication service tax. And those obligations are important to us. It's why we're a business, and one of our contributions towards Ghana's economic development through our payment of taxes, not just paying them, but also paying them promptly. As part of our 25 years, we deem it important to continue to support economic growth. And looking at some of the focus areas for government and asking ourselves the question, how can we support more? So we've thought about different areas, largely in line with our ambition to drive a digital economy and become a digital economy in a few years, but also aligned to our core competencies of technology. So we're currently in the process of designing a proposal around how we can support government in building an ICT hub and potentially multiple ICT hubs. This forms part of the Ghana Cares program and the technology hubs. We're also looking at innovation cities where we can bring SMEs together into one specific area and they can develop things and launch small companies and drive innovation and really use this as an opportunity as a platform for Ghana and for West Africa as well. And everything we do today, we're thinking, how does Ghana become more competitive within AFCFTA when it happens? And how can we be that beacon in West Africa or in Africa that can essentially dictate what happens economically once we get into this era of AFCFTA? So quite important for us. Of course, talking to Ministry of Finance and other ministries, Ministry of Communications on Ghana Cares and the way we can continue to support outside of ICT hubs. So if there are other initiatives we can participate in, more linked towards technology, we'll be looking at that as well. We all know there's a big focus on the girl child, and ICT in particular is also a big focus. So bringing these two together in the program called Girls in ICT that's been led by the Ministry of Communications and Digitalization. Again, an area where we see ourselves as major partners to support that growth. We can support female Ghanaians into ICT through one of these programs, and we're looking at supporting in a multi-year agreement with the ministry and with government. Beyond all of this, financial inclusion continues to be paramount. And the merchant space is one area where we continue to have opportunity to grow. And there's been a lot of talk around digitizing merchant services, the Ghana QR code, the GHQR, that's been led by Bank of Ghana and GIPS. And we're committed to this. In fact, this month, by the end of the month, we should announce the first phase of our GHQR implementation. So we're excited about that, where you'll be able to use USSD to pay using QR codes at merchants going forward. We have close to 200,000 merchants today. And then the second phase will be using an app where you can scan. So that'll be QR scan through an app supporting the Ghana QR code program. So very exciting stuff ahead of us in a couple of weeks. But I'm sure anytime I have discussions with the media, including this week, there's a big focus on regulation and what this means. And in our breakfast meeting 2 days ago, I talked a lot about the pace of technology evolution and the gap between that evolution and policy evolution, and how we can bridge that gap to make sure policy is able to cope with the rate of change within the technology innovation space. There are some key areas. We've talked a lot about SMP and what declaring MTN as an SMP means, and some of the initiatives under SMP. And of course, we've gone through, several iterations and discussions on SMP. But today we're at a place where the fact is that Ghana is in a very critical situation today. Like I mentioned before, the rate of growth of demand for telecom services is much, much, much faster than the investment in infrastructure to manage that demand. So basically, if you have demand growing much faster than infrastructure, at some point, everything crashes. You don't have enough capacity to support the demand, and therefore everything comes down. We get to a standstill. So it's imperative on all of us, private sector and government, to make sure that the investment in infrastructure continues at the rate that's required to be ahead of the demand. Otherwise, we have this risk ahead of us. So in as much as we're SMP, our responsibility to Ghana to continue to invest hasn't gone away. And you've seen from our investments this year, over 200 million, the highest single investment in any 1 year in MTN's last 10 to 15 year history, and potentially even over our 25 years, demonstrates our appetite and our understanding of the needs of the Ghana market from a technology innovation and technology development standpoint. And I just want to reassure all of you that that appetite and that recognition will continue in the coming years. So far, we've implemented some of the remedies that have been defined as part of SMP, the asymmetric interconnect in October last year, on-net, off-net parity differential removal on August 1st this year, and we continue to work with the NCA and the ministry to define the remaining remedies for implementation as and when we're advised. In terms of localization, we committed to the government to localize Scancom PLC up to 25% through very early next year, Q1 next year. So we're very busy working on that. But as part of the PSSA, the Payment Systems and Services Act 2019 from the Bank of Ghana, we're also required to localize mobile money, the subsidiary company, Mobile Money Limited of MTN. So that process is also ongoing to get to localization of 30%. We'll work with advisors and going through the process now. We're hopeful that we can meet the January 15th, 2022 timeline. But in all of this, I've talked a lot about the rate of growth of demand of data services. And spectrum is a critical asset that's required to allow us to have enough capacity available. So spectrum availability is a critical element. Today, we have a lot of pleas out there for government to continue to push on spectrum availability, something that's required if we're to sustain the rate of growth of capacity. We can't do it by sites alone. We also need spectrum to complement the sites so that we can increase the amount of data capacity within the industry. So these are the key regulatory things we're working on, and hopefully we can work with all of you to push these things forward. But very exciting. But as you know, you don't get to 25 years of success by building sites and putting up buildings. You get to 25 years of success because of the people you have. And today, I just want to highlight some of the things we've done to continue to invest in our people and ensure that we can sustain the path we're on. Because you can do all of this and get to a point where you just can't continue. But that continued investment in our people guarantees that we can continue to deliver on what we've started. Obviously, COVID has brought and heightened awareness around health and safety, no doubt, is very important for us as well. Ensuring our employees are well-trained, well-educated. We're giving them the necessary support to different doctor services, but also enabling them to have the necessary gear, PPEs to work in our environments, and that's a big pillar for us. But of course, beyond that, allowing people to work in flexible ways so that they can continue to be productive wherever they are. So flexible working is a big area for us. But in all of that, also changing the way we develop staff. Virtual platforms for learning, giving people access to all these different contents so they can develop themselves even while they work from home and we don't have these physical presence anymore. And then lastly, driving culture. And it's particularly important in an era like this where people are dispersed and not necessarily working together as we continue to observe different protocols and social distancing. So enhancing the way we think about culture, but the way we also influence culture as one of the focus areas for us from a people perspective. Finally, the future is bright yellow, and this will bring me to the last section of the penultimate section. You know, if we had drawn this Africa map based on technology companies, 10 years ago, we would have seen a very different picture. Today, a lot of these names you won't even recognize, and this is just defining the landscape of technology that we live in today, and why adapting your strategy is so important, because the landscape has changed, and you have to be relevant within that landscape. You can't do your own thing and be irrelevant in the landscape. So the future is about relevance as a company. And despite our successes in the past, our past successes don't mean anything for the future. We've seen companies like Nokia, BlackBerry go down, and were very successful historically. So we have to continue to evolve to be relevant. And that's what we're doing today with our investment strategy, with our Ambition 2025, securing our future relevance. What that means is all these different things we'll focus on in 2021 and 2022. We've touched on a lot of these, from localization, splitting the MOMO business and achieving the PSSA requirements, investing in technology, developing stronger partnerships with government to drive on the digital ambitions. These are all areas that we will continue to focus on in 2021 through 2022. But my final slide is just to summarize everything I've said. And for those who fell asleep, you've missed nothing because everything is on this one slide. I'm just going to read all these messages. MTN remains grateful to all stakeholders. We would never be here today without our customers. So thank you, customers, for your custom, for your loyalty over the 25 years. Thank you for believing and staying with us through that period. And thank you, most importantly, for forgiving us when we made mistakes. I believe we have learned and we continue to improve. So thank you for giving us that opportunity. MTN's strategy continues to evolve, again, to stay relevant to our customer needs. MTN is a bold investor. We continue to take bold steps, take risks. We've taken many risks in our evolution, and we'll continue to do that because if we don't take risks, we won't evolve as a company. MTN embarks on 4G on all sites by the end of 2022. That's exciting. Again, today we have people sitting in here who are working very hard to make sure that happens, and we're quite excited. Spectrum availability is key, like I highlighted, to continue to grow. Our commitment to GHQR to support financial inclusion acceleration continues. MTN will continue to enhance customer experience. Like I said, this is a pivotal area for us, quite important. And MTN's commitment to partnering government towards achievement of Ghana's digital ambitions, again, paramount for us. MTN is an enabler of SME businesses in Ghana, an area where we have one of our Ambition 2025 pillars dedicated to enterprise solutions focused on SMEs. And then lastly, MTN will continue to invest in employees. Like I said, you don't get this far without leadership. You don't get this far without our people. And therefore, that investment continues to be very critical and important to us. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Oyiwadon.